Welcome to the next lesson in our season series. Today we'll be painting a traditional pumpkin scene. I have fond memories going to the pumpkin patch with my family and picking out just the right pumpkin to carve into a jack-o'-lantern. The smell of cut fresh pumpkin and sipping on a hot apple cider gets me in the mood for a celebration of fall. Let's get started and have some fun. Take your spray bottle, spray your pans of paint, put some water in your palette. Now, in this lesson, I do use a template, and here is mine. So you can make your shape of pumpkin the way you like it. And you want to set it a little bit off to the side here. This pumpkin will be sitting on a table. And we want it about right here. Then pick up your liner brush. Wet your brush. And let's trace the pumpkin with cadmium red. Just trace along it. Go up the stem, then lift it up. All right. Then start spreading some of that paint so that line disappears. And load your brush as needed. Let's change brushes to round with pointed tip and cover more of the surface of the pumpkin here. Get your brush wet, load it with some more of that cadmium red, and spread that paint. And try and relax your grip on your brush. Let the paint just flow and load your brush as needed. We want to make that line disappear. Fill that space up. That's looking pretty good. Now let's put a touch of yellow ochre on that pumpkin. And you can mix some of that with your cadmium red in your palette there. And when you look at a pumpkin that has lines, and the lines go vertical. Okay, let's let that dry a little bit. Now let's add some color to the stem. To do that, let's use burnt umber and a touch of burnt sienna. Fill in that stem. Okay, let's continue to use this color. Now, this pumpkin is sitting on a table, and the table goes out this way, And I'm going to put a line about right here and then have it come down this way. And it's a wood table, so we're going to make it the color like wood grain. And always with watercolor, you're building those layers. So let's continue to use our two colors, burnt umber and burnt sienna, and make our table that the pumpkin is sitting on. And I'm making the lines go this way, going down in this direction. And load your brush as needed. And the table continues on to here. And go ahead and fill that space with some watercolor. Now I notice right here it's starting to go into the pumpkin a little bit, but with watercolor you can always go back and fix it, which I will do. Okay, let's stop and give it a good dry. Now, you might notice right here the paint started to puddle, and I'm just going to dab it a little bit like that. And you'll notice that the paint did something funky here, but we're going to fix that. Let's work on this pumpkin and make it a brighter orange. Make those lines that you see in a pumpkin. Let's start using our round with pointed tip brush. Load it with cadmium red. And let's cover up that spot. We don't want the water spot to show. Bring the color up at the top and bring it back down like that. Come around to the bottom. Let's continue that. And I want some of the lighter orange to show through. So don't cover it completely. Then come back down and work around till you get to the other side of the pumpkin. This is a bright pumpkin, was ready to pick right off that patch, pumpkin patch. Almost to the other side. All the way to the other side. Now, you might want to put some diversity in this pumpkin, and you can do that by, let's load our round with pointed tip brush and just put some spots of yellow in the pumpkin to give it some depth. A little more, and you can mix some more of the orange in there and just spread it in there. A little different, like that. That's looking pretty good. Okay, let's leave it like that. Now let's work on the background. Now in the background there is a forest, so we're going to use some of our green. So let's take some of our sap green and make some viridian green. And those two colors, and start at the top and spread that. I'm going to create a wash. So now we're getting into a bigger space, so let's switch our brushes and use our mop brush to get better coverage. Wet your mop brush. Get some of that viridian and sap green. And put that in the background, and be careful of your pumpkin. And it should be dry enough that if it touches, the paint will not spread. Bring it back down here. And if it does, you can just dab it a little bit. Easy fix, easy fix. Just give it a good coverage there. Go all the way down the side here. A little more. One more here. Along the pumpkin here. Like that. Now, let's add some color in the background that's faded. And it's nice to add some cadmium yellow just in the background. Maybe there's some leaves that are starting to change colors in that forest. Just dab some of that color just randomly where it makes sense, like that. Little spots of light. Now I noticed it really ran here, and I didn't really want it to do that, but that is an easy fix. Now let's stop and give that a good dry. Now I might need to go back there and fix that pumpkin. But, you know, again, it's an easy fix. And sometimes when you look at your watercolor, you think, oh, I don't like it. Oh, yuck. But be patient and loving with yourself, and give yourself time, and you can go back. You can always go back. And remember, it's just a piece of paper. So let's go back and work on that pumpkin again. And using our round with pointed tip brush, make some more definition here. Now I had to blot some of this color out, and I want to put some of that color back in. And loading my brush with cadmium red. And let's try a touch of crimson with it. Maybe I want to leave a little bit of that white that I dabbed. And a touch of the green that came on the paper. That's okay. Just gives it a little more character. My happy little pumpkin. You know, when you look at pumpkins, they're each one is a little different. Even in nature, not everything is symmetrical. Just continue to make some definition on these lines here. Need to put some in this area here. Like that. Okay, that's looking better. Now, one more spot. One more spot. Let's look at the wood here. And to create the grain effect, we need to create those layers. And we have a light layer on here. So let's add the next layer. And let's just load your brush with burnt umber. And make some lines down like there's planks of wood. So you can start by making the lines and then dipping your brush in water and spreading that paint and letting it spread by itself. And that will create some lines. Doing the same thing on this plank of wood. Need to wet my brush more. And it's just testing and experimenting with watercolor. Like that. And then let's put another plank right here. And one about right here. And then spread the paint that's on your brush already. A little paint can go a long way. So I need a little more. I lost some of it. You can think of it as a science experiment. A little bit more here. Okay. So now let's turn our attention to the stem. And let's use some burnt sienna, just plain burnt sienna to start, and add a layer here. And when I look at the stem of a pumpkin, it's kind of twisty and turny. So I want to make the appearance of it twisting. So I want to leave some of the white. And then have it come down, and then again a little darker. Now I want that to dry. So let's go and work on a little bit more of the pumpkin. Now on the stem, there's some darker areas there. So let's mix our cadmium red with a touch of the burnt sienna. and put some below here on the stem and spread that out. Need a little more darker. See better? And then there's some of that color down below the pumpkin. Like that. Okay. Now, on the table, there's going to be some leaves, some fall beautiful leaves. So let's take some of our cadmium orange and crimson and faintly make some leaves, some maple leaves. And it doesn't have to be exact shape. Just, you know, when you look at a maple leaf, it has points. And they're just in a jumble pile. So just kind of make a jumble pile. Doesn't have to be exact. Just sitting on the table. And I like to think as a maple that there's points, like one point here, another one here, and a one here. And let's take some of our cadmium yellow and put some yellow there. And just let it mix in with the color with the paint that you already put on there. And then there's some of those leaves right at the bottom of the pumpkin. And spread some of that color along here and to the other side, like so. We're going to let that sit and dry and work on another part of the painting. So on here, there's some branches with red berries. I'm going to put those in, but we're going to wait a minute and take some of the yellow here in the cadmium red and put some of the leaves here. And we're going to just faintly put some shapes in and then draw in the branches after. Just let your imagination go. And just, they're dangling over the pumpkin and just giving it some little light. I love the fall leaves when they change. They're just so beautiful. So I'll put some of those like that. And then the berries, just load your round with pointed tip brush with crimson and just put some little dots. There's a tree with berries in it, like that. Okay, now let's work on this area over here. We want to add some of that trees dangling over. So just faintly add some of those trees, just a faint shadow of cadmium red, a little crimson. And then what I like to do is clean your brush and take some cadmium yellow and just put it in there and let the paint run a little bit. Has a nice kind of fall effect. Now, I notice right here, I don't like how the paint kind of ran and there's water lines. But right here, I want it to be darker, but I'm going to use a darker green. So let's take some of our sap green and mix a little ochre, yellow ochre. I'm going to make it more of an olive green. It's a little bit dark, but that's okay. I'm going add some water and kind of fade it out. And I want the color to come right next to that table there. Spread it that way and have it come all the way down like that. Okay, let's stop and give it a good dry. Take your liner brush and now let's draw some of those, or paint in some of those branches. And load your brush with burnt umber. And let's just make the branch kind of come in here and just vaguely make it connect with the red dots. Now those kind of spread it in more of blobs, but we can go back in and fix that. Easy peasy. And then make some branches down here like that, and then down here in the leaves. It's just making a suggestion. You know, I love how nature is that they're not, everything is symmetrical and full of surprises and wonder. And remember, this is your creation. And let's take some of this color and go in the stem of the pumpkin. Make some nice bold lines here. And now that we have, we're going to create even a darker layer on the pumpkin by using the burnt sienna and a touch of the cadmium red. We want it to be more of like a rust burnt color. Let's test that. Still need a little more of the orange. That's a little better. It looks dark now, but we're going to add some water and thin it out. And it does look a little more orange when you thin it out. And that's the fun of creating those many layers of watercolor. Let's bring it down on the bottom of the pumpkin here. A little more on this side. Some more lines over here. Some on the bottom here. Like that. That's looking pretty good. Now, we need to cast some shadows here. Let's take some of our burnt umber, touch of our burnt sienna, little water, and make a little shadow below the pumpkin, and a little bit some on the leaves too. And if it's too strong, just add water to dilute it. We want our pumpkin to stand out. A little more on here on the pumpkin. And then pause for a moment. Let's bring some of it over here. This other side like that. Let's give it another good dry. Now I still want a little darker color. So let's take our burnt umber, some burnt sienna, and a touch of crimson. And go back in here to create more of this shadow. Love the different shades of brown. And now we need to create some of the shadow under the leaves here. Just like that. Let's put some in the wood plank here. A little bit like that. That's looking pretty good. Now, right here, there's some water lines, and I don't really like that. So I'm going to fix that by adding more of this leaf color here, which I used crimson and some cadmium red here, and put some a little bit there. It's a little bit strong. I'm going to dab that a little bit. A little bright. Let's add some yellow ochre with that. And we'll kind of fade it a little bit. Just when you look at your painting, and if your eye is drawn to some area, then that's when maybe you need to change it and just try something a little different. And a lot of times it doesn't need much. Just might need a little dab, a little touch, a little fading. And that's the fun with it. Have fun with your watercolor. It's your friend. All right, I think it's time to stop. And a lot of times I know when to stop is when I start going to an area like 10 times. And that's when I'm thinking, okay, I'm fussing too much. Let it go. Enjoy it. View your painting. I hope you enjoyed today. I certainly did. I love fall and it's so inspiring. And I hope today was inspiring for you to paint more. Thank you for joining me today.